Well, good morning, good evening, good day, good night, wherever you're watching this video from. We appreciate you dialing in for another video. As always, we appreciate everyone that watches the videos, gives us any feedback. If you have any questions, you can hit us over on the Facebook page at webbaptist.com or go to our website at webbaptist.com. Just leave us a message. If you have any prayer requests or concerns, please let us know, and we'll be glad to get in touch with you and go from there. Please like and subscribe to the video if you want to be get notified every time we make a video. Subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be notified every time that I post a video. Usually we post them on Mondays and Thursdays, these video series. The services, of course, are online Sunday afternoons, and we'd love for you to watch and be a part of our family. If you can't make it to Webb Baptist here, please get involved in the church wherever you are, getting plugged into a Bible-based church and see what God has in store for you. I guarantee you it'll be a blessing beyond measure. So anyway, so we're continuing with the People of the Bible series. We talked about Herod the Great last week, and this week we're going to be talking about his son, Herod Antipas. Antipas. So I say it really quick, Antipas. And so we're going to get into that, and we're going to talk about that because one thing leads to another. Whereas Herod the Great dealt with Jesus when he was a baby and that whole situation with the murder of the innocents, we see his son Antipas will be dealing with Jesus' crucifixion as well as John the Baptist. So we'll be getting into that now. So keep in mind that these videos are very, I paint with broad strokes, as I always say. It's to give you kind of a cliff note, small truncated version of history, the people, the places, those kind of things. I hope that this encourages you to do your own research and do a little bit digging of your own into these people and these places that have something to do with the Bible, either directly or indirectly or on the periphery. And you get to know not just the Bible, but what was going on in that world at that time, how it affected these people that we talk about, these places and these things. So, but again, do your own research if you want to, and you're going to find out that there's an awful lot to this. Where I'm being general, I may have some details, but you can find more on your own. So now keep in mind that Herod the Great, he had children, but if you recall, he's a very paranoid king, and he killed 3 of his sons, 2 of his wives, and 1 of his mother-in-law. So he's a paranoid man. So he killed off some of his own his own children, so to speak. So what's left is Herod Antipas was one of 3 left that followed Herod the Great. Now, Herod Antipas was never king. Okay, now in the New Testament they refer to him as King Herod, but he wasn't king. He never got that title. Rome made him into what was called a Jewish tetrarch, which is he was essentially a governor of a quarter of the province that his father was king of. Okay, so he was never really a king. He never got that title. Now, he is known for his role of course, executing John the Baptist and the role of Jesus of Nazareth. His beginnings are real simple. It's around 20 BC, and he was educated in Rome along with his brothers. Okay, so that's where he was. Now, Herod Antipas was not the choice for first choice for heir. To be honest with you, I think Herod the Great didn't want any of his children to be heir. 3 of them, he had them killed for suspicion of conspiracy. Well, what does that mean? He got wind, he heard a rumor, and they were going to overthrow him, so he decided to kill them. That's pretty much what it boils down to. So what was left was three sons, and so they were not the first choices, but that's what was left. And so when Herod the Great was on his deathbed and he was changing his wills left and right, what do we have left? You know, and I got to keep in mind that the last oldest son Herod II, which they believe was also called Philip, he stayed in Rome the whole time. So he kind of avoided being around his dad because he knew his dad was crazy. So, so that's where all that came in. So now, as Herod the Great's illness around 4 BC, we're looking at that's when it began. But as it went on, he kept changing his will until he finally passed away. His kingdom was divided between Archelaus, Herod II Philip, and Antipas. So those were the three that were left. Now, once Herod the Great died, the sons, all of them met in Rome because none of them could agree on the will or on the line of succession. And Rome had to ratify it because Judea was a Roman province. So it's not like Herod the Great could pass on his succession to his kids without Rome's approval. So Rome had to approve whatever the case, because Rome may not like the children at all and they want to install their own government. So, but since Herod the Great was very loyal to Rome, they would assume that the children would be as well. Now, Herod Antipas argued that all of it should go to him, and that's what needed to happen. So you need to keep the kingdom together. The other two brothers were not living in their province; they were living in Rome. So why should they get any of it? Okay, so and of course, Herod the Great constantly changed his will up, so it was really up in the air. But the bottom line is, the brothers argued for the division. Antipas argued to keep it all together. So, but Augustus, who was Caesar at this time, the emperor, honored Herod the Great's will of secession and divided up the kingdom. So he pretty much said, look, your father ended up saying, all three of you will equally, divide this up. So that's what I'm going to do. And so Herod Antipas never got to be king. What he got was a governorship, a small piece. So he was a tetrarch, which is pretty much what it means is rule of a quarter. Is the translation of that. So he was kind of like I said, a governor of this territory. So from 4 BC to around 39 AD, so about 42 years that Antipas was in this thing. So what was his reign? What did it look like? Well, he had Perea to the south, and it bordered on Nabatea, okay, Nabatea. So, and I hopefully I'll have the map up here. And for the most part, the Nabateans were they had an uneasy alliance with Rome. They weren't a Roman province; they were a different empire, so to speak, and they were right there on the border. And they helped with the Jewish rulers they were friendly with the Maccabees in that time in between the Old and New Testament, but became rivals against the Hasmonean dynasty, and that was during the Hellenistic times of Judea and the Jewish rulers. So during Hasmonean time, during this time, they're seen as rivals. Okay, so and so so Herod Antipas had Perea, bordering on Nabatea to the south. So there was always that tension. There's always some border skirmishes and that kind of stuff going on down there. Now he had Galilee, the region of Galilee to the north. So if you look at the map, hopefully I have it here. If you look at the map, he had two distinct areas that were barely connected. It looks kind of odd that he would get that kind of area, but that's how Augustus, divided it up. So what separated these two areas was Decapolis, which is a small province in between, or right there in the middle of all that. And Decapolis is which literally means in Greek 10 cities. So this Decapolis area was a Hellenistic, Gentile, Greek area in between these other two provinces that were primarily Jewish. Now, so that's his territory that he's got to take control of. The problem is he's got to make peace with the Nabateans, and he ends up marrying the king's daughter. So he's got that going on for him. So he's got an alliance to the south that seems to be working. Now in Galilee to the north, he's got this troublemaker named John the Baptist. So so he was not one to. He was trying to keep the peace, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So now both regions, like I said, separated by Decapolis. So what did Antipas do? He chose to kind of follow in his father's footsteps. And what I mean by that is his father built a lot of good stuff. He built a lot of fortresses. He brought in a lot of infrastructure. He expanded the temple. Herod the Great did a lot of things, and that's where the Great in his name comes from, because he built so many massive structures, and so he brought in so much infrastructure, roadways, drainage, aqueducts, and all this stuff. The stuff that he saw in Rome, he brought to the palace. So he kind of upgraded and brought these people out of the ancient world and to at that time, the modern world. And so he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. Well, what is he going to do? So he rebuilt and fortified Sepphoris, which is another city, capital city of Tiberias, was established on the western shore of Galilee. So Tiberias had warm springs, it had a stadium, a royal palace, and a sanctuary for prayer. So Tiberias was his capital city that he made. The problem is he built it on a graveyard. So with it being on a graveyard, a lot of pious Jews and Jews in general were uneasy being there at that city, because they felt like it was a source of impurity, being that you're right there, you're building your city and your palace and everything on an old graveyard. So Antipas is, in order to make it a capital and bring in a population, Antipas couldn't convince the pious Jews and a lot of the Jews in general to live there. So what did he do? Well, he imported slaves, forced migrants and poor people. He brought them in and said, hey, live here. So that's how he made that his capital city, is he had to force people to live in a place that many Jews did not want to live. Now, obviously, his dad, Herod the Great, was half Jewish on his mother's side. So the Jewish people really didn't accept him. Well, what do you think was going to happen with Antipas? Antipas was, if his dad was half Jew, then maybe he was a quarter Jew. So, or a third Jew. So they really didn't accept him either. But he wasn't called king. He was just a governor. He wasn't really, he didn't have the same power, authority, or sway as his father did. Now, going back to Herod, here's where some of the problems that we have. So he's established. He's got his own little territories that he's ruling and governing. Now, Herod Antipas wanted to keep things quiet. His goal was not to bring Rome to any attention to his province at all, okay? He wanted peace. Remember now, Rome only wants two things. They want peace and they want taxes. That's it. They got to feed their war machine. In order for that to happen, you got to pay those taxes. But we want peace in our backyard. So Herod Antipas knew this, and he was like, okay, well, I'm going to do everything I can to keep the peace here. Well, okay, that's easier said than done when you have someone like John the Baptist and Jesus, these revolutionaries in your province. So now Herod was already married. Like I said earlier, he was already married to the king, the daughter to the king of the Nabatean empire to the south, right? So he was married to the neighbor's daughter. Now, here's where trouble gets in. Okay, so Herod Antipas decides to go to Rome to visit his brother. So he's staying with his brother. He visits his half brother in Rome. It's either Herod II or Philip. By some sources, this is not clear because the names kind of switch themselves in and out. Being that we're talking about a Jewish culture merging with the Roman and the Greek culture and the Hellenization going on. Sometimes those name changes happen. So sources are not sure, but I'm going to call him Herod II, being his brother, Herod II or Philip. So anyway, he was there visiting his brother Philip, Herod II Philip, when he fell in love with Philip's wife. Oh, now we got a problem. So he's already married, so he falls in love with Herodias. Okay, so we'll get into Herodias in a minute. Now, she was the granddaughter of Herod the Great and Miriam the First. So he fell in love with his brother's wife. She was a granddaughter to Herod the Great. So basically, you're looking at an incestuous relationship to begin with, when she was married to Herod II, called Philip. So anyway, so she falls in love. They fall in love with each other, and so that becomes a problem. So they agree to get married after Herod Antipas divorces his wife. So we have a little bit of daytime drama going on here, don't we? So what we're seeing here is we don't see a great man. What we see here is a flawed man who's already married and decides he's in love with another woman, with his brother's wife. So now Antipas's original wife and daughter fled to their father, King Aretas IV of Nabatea, down to the south on the Arabian Peninsula. And that king, Aretas, decides to declare war on Herod and Antipas. So now he's got a problem. So to the south, he's got the Nabatean Empire getting ready to march and wipe them out. They don't care about what Rome's doing because Rome's so stretched out. Nabateans are pretty big of their own, and they know that Rome, for the most part, is stretched thin. They're more dealing with Gaul and up in modern-day France and Spain. They're dealing more with the Goths and the Visigoths at this time and the Germanic tribes, that they're not really worried about what's going on their eastern flank. So that's where we are. So they decide to flee Herod Antipas because he's already pledged his love and heart to Herodias, and for their protection, they flee back home, or the wife and her daughter. So now, sources are not too clear on the next part. Josephus says Herodias divorced her husband while he was alive, and that's in the Antiquity of the Jews books, 18, chapter 5, paragraph 4. So if you read the works of Josephus, you'll see there that she divorced her husband while he was still alive. But some suggest the marriage to Herodias took place shortly after the war with the Nabateans and after the death of Herod II, who was Philip. And what's his name? Kolkinos of the Herodian dynasty, page 298, 277, 268, 277, excuse me. So which one it really doesn't matter if Herod II, Philip, was dead or alive. The bottom line is she left him and she ended up marrying Herod Antipas. And the Nabatean king didn't like that at all because that was a disgrace to him and his daughter. So what's going to happen? Well, the bottom line is Herod Antipas appeals in 37 AD. He appeals to Tiberius for help, and Tiberius dispatches 2 legions from Syria to help him. So he said, okay, we're going to help you out. We'll get 2 legions and go that way. Well, guess what happens? While the 2 legions are on their way down there to help him out, Tiberius, he dies. So the general who's got these 2 legions getting ready to go down and fight the Nabateans, he says, well, now the emperor's dead. I don't have the authority to go to war. So he just turns around and leaves. So this leaves Herod Antipas with the Nabateans to the south, and he also has some issues with his the refugees from his brother's empires, other brothers coming in to help the Nabateans. So without those troops and with Tiberius' death, Herod Antipas petitioned Caligula for king of Judea. However, so we have this problem here where the Nabateans are defeating Antipas, but Antipas is looking at the fact that, okay, wait a minute, my brothers are speaking out against me, and they're refugees are helping out the Nabateans. The Nabateans are fighting me on this eastern front. Rome, are you going to help me out? Well, Tiberius is dead. Like I said, now Emperor Caligula is in power. Okay? Now, so Caligula is left with this problem. And Antipas is trying to say, Herod Antipas is saying, I want to be king. We should have a king over here. So he's petitioning Caligula to be king of Judah. Well, at the same time, Agrippa, Caligula's friend, Antipas's nephew, and Herodias' brother, see how all this gets mixed in together? All these relationships are just like this. I mean, they're all intertwined, and it's kind of ugly. And we'll see why that's a problem in a minute. Agrippa also presents to Caligula. He wants to be king. But the difference is Agrippa shows Caligula that he's saying that Antipas is looking to overthrow the emperor. That's a big charge, right? So what he's saying is he's bringing charges against Herod Antipas, a conspiracy against Caligula, and a massive store of weapons to prove that. Well, so Herod Antipas, he's got to figure out, okay, what's this charge all about? Obviously, Agrippa is bringing lies against him in order to get this throne, to get this this kingdom. Well, part of the problem is the massive stores of weapon are true. So there is a lot of weapons, and that's what Caligula sees, and he finds out. Then Herod Antipas admits to the weapons. Well, so if the emperor is looking at the fact, okay, I got suspicion of conspiracy against you, but you also got a massive store of weapons, which you probably shouldn't have. So the conspiracy against Herod Antipas was proven as fact in the mind and the eyes of Caligula. So what we have here in the summer, in AD 39, he stripped of all of his wealth, all of his money, and all of his property, and all of his land. So all of that. So whereas Herod Antipas was going to petition Caligula to become king of the Judea, the end result is exile. So because Agrippa kind of beat him to the punch and said, look, he's conspiring against Rome, and you need to do away with him, and I'll be a better king. So that's what happened. So in 39 AD, Antipas loses all his money, his territory, and all of that's turned over to Agrippa. And he and Herodias were exiled to Gaul, so to modern-day Lyon of France. Nothing else is known. He dies in exile, no children, other than the daughter we get in a minute. But so you kind of see what's going on there. He kind of fades into history without doing much of anything. So that's Herod Antipas right there. He didn't do much anything. He wanted to be king and ended up being exiled. Why didn't Caligula kill him? There's no telling. He could have killed him at any time on a whim, but he decided as emperor to exile him. Now, during this time, there's two things that as far as we Christians look at, that Herod, not king, but Herod Antipas is really known for, which is, one, the beheading of John the Baptist. Well, John the Baptist, during all this time going on, And before the exile, of course, during Herod Antipas's control, John the Baptist spoke against the relationship between Herod and Herodias. He spoke out against the incestuous relationship as it was an affront to Jewish law. And so John the Baptist was very vocal about this. Now, Herod Antipas didn't say anything. He was scared. He was afraid of John the Baptist because of his popularity. He felt that if he were to kill him, then he would be more popular and he would have a lot of uprising against him. So he was kind of afraid of John the Baptist. Herodias, on the other hand, was not. Herodias couldn't stand John the Baptist and she wanted him killed. Well, as you read in the Bible, eventually they, with the help of her daughter, which some scholars say is Salome, with the daughter's help, they tricked the Herod Antipas into killing John the Baptist and cutting off his head and presenting it as a gift. So, but he was afraid of him. He was really afraid of him because he was, like I said, Herod Antipas wanted to have things peaceful and quiet in his little corner of the world. He didn't want Rome to look at them at all. Be silent, do nothing, pay your taxes, and keep the peace. Well, people like John the Baptist were speaking and they were loud, and he didn't like that. At the time, he didn't want to kill John the Baptist, but Herodias did because of what he spoke out, what he was speaking out against their relationship and their marriage. Now, again, before the war, Jesus of Nazareth, Herod Antipas believed that Jesus was John the Baptist raised from the dead. So when he first saw him, this is what he was thinking. He didn't like what Jesus said either. Jesus was speaking of a kingdom and being a king and all this other stuff. Well, that spoke to his power, and that that was an affront to Rome in his mind. So he didn't like that either. So now in Gospel of Luke, Jesus arrested and sent to Antipas. Antipas was pleased to see Jesus and hoped to see a miracle, and he tried to get Jesus to say something, do something to prove his supernatural abilities. But Jesus didn't say anything. He remained quiet. So Antipas mocked him, and the soldiers beat Jesus, and they sent him back to Pilate. And so we briefly see where Antipas had those two instances, and that's brief. I mean, what we're seeing is a weak man, a weak leader, I should say. So in summary, he was not as great as his granddaddy, Antipater, or his daddy, Herod the Great. He was just, his decline was evident. He was not a great man. He was pretty much a Roman lackey, and he had less power and authority than his father did. Remember now, his father was a king of Judea. He was nothing more than a tetrarch, which is 1/4 power is like a governor of two provinces, and that was it. So and those provinces weren't that big. So he worked at keeping a good impression for Rome and tried to keep things calm, but he succeeded for the most part. But then, you're looking at the Herodias, where he fell in love with her. So he had the problem going on with the Nabatean Empire to the south. And of course, those revolutionaries, John the Baptist and Jesus of Nazareth, who weren't, they brought a concern to the forefront for him, but in the eyes of Rome, they were just nothing more than revolutionaries, descendants which had to be killed and done away with, okay? But in his eyes, they represented something bigger. He wanted everything to be quiet, and they weren't quiet at all. Outside John the Baptist and Jesus of Nazareth, he was just a political regional governor. There was really nothing special going on. He built a capital city for himself, and he had to force people to live there. The Jews didn't want to live there because it was built on a graveyard. So it was a source of impurity, which matched his marriage as well, a source of impurity. So that's what the kind of person we're looking at. The political sway held by his grandfather and his father did not keep with Herod Antipas. So by the time Herod Antipas comes around, history shows why he was not the first choice of succession. All the children under Herod the Great were left wanting. Herod the Great didn't want any of his kids. He was like, God, this is horrible. My kids are terrible. I don't want any of them ruling. I wish I could live another 100 years. That way I can kill them off and get some other kids up in here. But the bottom line is he had to make some kind of choice and he had to leave some kind of legacy. And who he left it with were 3 kids that left a lot to be desired. So that's the problem that Herod the Great had. Now, the shift in the political winds, Antipas could not fall into step and fell out of favor with a lot of elites in Rome. He just didn't have the same clout, the same sway, the same guile. He didn't have the same power. He didn't have the same drive as his father did. And by this time, the people that were impressed and friendly and on good terms with Herod the Great and even his grandfather Antipas, they're gone. So what was left was some other people that saw the kids but weren't too impressed with them. Now you got to remember, back in this time, this is during the Roman, the Greek, the Hellenization, all these religious and powerful leaders. They all married together, and their families were so intertwined. It was just unreal. So everybody was familiar with one another, and alliances were being made with marriages and that kind of crap. So you can see where some of that just mixes in together and just makes a mess. And part of that is what John the Baptist talked about with the incestuous relationship with Herodias. So now on the side note, we did back in Mark 10:42 to 43, we saw where Jesus was talking with disciples, and they were talking about who would sit at the right and who would sit at the left, if you remember that. And Jesus said, "You don't know what you're asking of me." And Jesus goes on, and I'm truncating here. If you want to go back and look at Mark 10:42, 43, I think, or maybe 40, 43. If you go back and look at those, what Jesus is telling them is, this, what you're asking for me is kind of what Rome does. And we're not Roman, okay? The greatest among you will be a servant. In God's hierarchy of things, the least among you is going to be the greatest. What he was saying here was pretty much what we're pointing out here with Antipas. When I was going through and I was looking through Herod Antipas, I kept seeing the similarities of what Jesus was talking about. What he was saying to the disciples was, you see how you're born into something and your power is just passed to you. They didn't earn it. Herod Antipas and his brothers Philip and Archelaus, they didn't earn anything. It was just given to them because of Herod the Great. And it was just passed on. They weren't elected. They didn't have to prove themselves. The only thing they had to do is prove that they were the son of Herod the Great. They assumed they got power based on that. And Jesus saying in the kingdom of God, it's not like that at all. Okay, in the kingdom of God, it really comes down to your worth. It comes down to your servanthood. It comes down to, your works for God. Okay, so no one can take that place away from you. So that's just on a side note of everything we're talking about. So the bottom line is, Herod Antipas was kind of a footnote in history, and the main reason why we're talking about him is because he has 2 places in the Bible, and they were not really that spectacular. So he was just not a good politician. He made some mistakes. He was kind of weak, ineffective. He wasn't as brutal and paranoid as his dad, but at the same time, I think that where he wasn't brutal or paranoid, he was kind of clueless and feckless. It would be the word that I would look at. So he just worked from a top of distance, thinking that this job was given to him and he would never lose it. So anyway, my sources were Wiki for Dates, Bible Gateway, Works of Josephus. If you don't have that book, I'd encourage you to get the Works of Josephus, simply because it's a good reference for the time in between the Old and the New Testament, and it also gives you some good work and good stuff after the New Testament as far as history goes. Now, Eusebius's Ecclesiastical History is also another good one. Philo is a good one as well. They kind of give you the stuff after the New Testament and going into the formation of the early church. So anyway, so that's what we got for today. I appreciate you dialing in. Thank you for your time, for watching, and I appreciate it. As always, you can hit us up over at Facebook on our page. Go to our website at webbaptist.com if you have any questions or comments. And as always, if you can, come into church, come to Webb Baptist. We'd love to have you here. You're going to have a great time with our services on Wednesdays and Sunday mornings. If you can't make it to Webb Baptist, Please get involved in a Bible-based church wherever you're at, and I guarantee you, you're going to be a blessing to them as much as they will be a blessing to you. Until next time, take care and God bless.